Preparing for this talk, I was like thinking through some different parts of our org, and it actually gave me a lot of good time to just understand how our org works compared to other collaboration models and some ideas for how to improve going forward.
I actually realized that there are so many other factors at play here. So my marketing counterpart and I have been working together for the past 3 years. We can read each other's mind. We recently had a new marketing lead join, and we suddenly realized that we need to redefine how we work together, having those conversations to align and to ensure that the way we want to work together, we have a framework in place.
I think one of the hard parts about go-to-market is alignment across a lot of different stakeholders, especially with some of our big launches. We just have 10 different groups that need to be bought in and working off the same assumptions, positioning statements, everything. And when you're in person, you can just go up to someone's desk and be like, oh yeah, that's the date, or oh, remind me of this. And you're just a little more fluid. Whereas when you're remote, you have to have perfect documentation to keep everyone on the same page. So I think that's one of the areas where there's just a bit more overhead with work from home.
I wanted to start today by, first of all, thanking all three of you ladies for being here, and also to thank the companies that you work with, Instacart, Upstart, and Yahoo Finance, because I know all three of your companies have been great supporters of women in product, and we really, really appreciate that.
Hi, everybody. I'm a senior product manager at Upstart, which is a fintech company in the lending space. And I'm excited for this panel because I worked in product marketing for about 5 years before I became a PM.
Hi, everyone. I'm JACKLYN. I'm a group product manager at Instacart. I work on the shopper side of our business. So just to clarify, we have customers. I imagine many of you are customers. You order groceries on Instacart. And then we have shoppers. Shoppers are the people going into grocery stores, picking groceries, delivering them. So that is my end customer, the shopper side of our marketplace. And prior to Instacart, I was at Lyft and a bike share startup, as I mentioned. So I'm very excited to be here as well.
Hey, my name is NIDHI SURANA, and I am a principal product manager at Yahoo Finance. Our primary revenue generation comes from ads and subscription models. So I am focused more on how can we diversify our revenue and what are some new avenues that we can explore. I've always had a penchant for product marketing, and that has resulted into some really great partnerships between product and product marketing and some really good lessons.
Product management and product marketing and how they fit together is one that I hear a lot about. I hear people talking about being done great, and I hear people talking about being done not so great. So I think it's great if we started with just some of the fundamentals, like why is product messaging so important and who's really responsible for it?
Product messaging is the first introduction between your product and your customer. That's the first point where we are building a relationship between the user and the product. So this is where we are establishing the relevance of the product, conveying the value proposition of the product to the user. So it kind of already explains why it's so important, because this is the beginning of that really strong relationship. Product messaging, in a sense, needs to be, there needs to be a tone that we use in our product messaging that either feels thoughtful, it should feel helpful, it should feel unassuming, and it should feel like you have a friend sitting next to you, hand holding you throughout the journey of how to use this product and how this product is going to either change your life or going to solve all your problems.
Simplistically, our job as PMs is to ship great products that move a business metric. And the way that our end users experience or understand or perceive what we're shipping is critical for achieving that. So at Instacart, when I think about my audience, I actually think about two different groups. The first is shoppers, the people who are working in the store and delivering groceries. And shoppers are on our platform to make money. Many are income insecure. Many don't speak English as a first language. And many are really using this as the primary way to pay their bills. And so messaging to them is critical so that they understand why changes are happening, how to use the product, how to kind of answer any questions that they might have. So that's the first audience, and the stakes are pretty high given what I just said.
Yeah.
The second audience we think a lot about is the broader public. And Instacart, like Uber and Lyft and DoorDash, we're operating in the gig space and the gig economy, a very scrutinized industry where there's a lot of change, a lot of regulatory action, and it's also high stakes. People are curious, how is this going to evolve? How is this going to be regulated? And any change we make is part of that. And so messaging for that context matters a lot as well, so that we make sure that people understand the decisions we're making, that we're looking out for shoppers, that we care about labor practices, and we're really doing right by our end customers.
So I work in the B2B space. Upstart is a lending platform, and my customer is not the borrower, like the people getting the loans, but the banks who are using our underwriting technology. For background, Upstart uses AI and machine learning models to underwrite loans in a different way than FICO, to get a more complete picture of the borrower. On the B2B side, product messaging is just a different world, I think, because if you have a fairly small customer base, there's such a white glove service with each of them, and the product messaging is really filtered out through the account managers, the client success managers. It goes out not through an interface like a app or an email, but through communication. So for us, the difficulty in nailing down product messaging is that the message has to go from product through product marketing and then out to our client-facing teams.
It's really interesting how it varies kind of with the markets that you're addressing. Overall, how are the groups structured? Are those really structured differently, and how does that interface between product management and product marketing work? So, what are the fundamentals that have to be in place there?
At Instacart, and this was the case at Lyft as well, in terms of the structure, the product manager owns the strategy, the vision, the roadmap, and the execution, through delivery. The product marketing manager owns the positioning, the messaging, the creative wrapper, the naming, and all of those kind of creative components that go into the go-to-market. So that's the overall ownership structure. The overlap, though, really does happen when you get to the go-to-market phase. And, if I'm working really closely with a product marketing manager on the positioning and emails and websites we might build, I'm working hand in hand and monitoring the focus groups and the user research and everything we're doing to test our messages, just as the PMM is working really closely with me as I'm setting the strategy and thinking through those earlier phases. The difference, though, is really in the ownership. And we use something called DRI, directly responsible individual, who's the person who's accountable, who's the owner, who's making the decisions. So the DRI might change at those different phases, but there's fluidity throughout the process from development through shipping.
I love that you brought up there's fluidity on the decision making, because I think that probably exemplifies a really great organization, but also could be a really dysfunctional one too. So how do you really tell?
So I think who's the decision maker and the owner is clear at each stage, because you have that DRI. I'm the DRI at this phase. I'm driving this decision, but I'm working really collaboratively to inform the decision. I'm bringing my partners along, and then ultimately, I'm the final say on the roadmap. Yeah. Whereas at the marketing stage, my PMM counterpart is the final say and the driver and owner of the positioning and the marketing, but we're working also quite closely hand in hand to make sure that we're on the same page.
And NIDHI, maybe you'd like to comment on that. I mean, I think talking about the quality of those relationships makes a big difference.
Collaboration is an extremely important ingredient when you're working with different cross-functional teams. So similar to all other teams, when you're working with your marketing counterparts, there's a big overlap between what a PM and a PMM does. So overall, there's a very clear distinction to what JACKLYN said, that the product strategy, the vision, the success metric, how you define your product's going to be successful or not, that's all something that comes under a product manager's purview. But these are all the set of informations that are going to be used by your product marketing counterpart to essentially create a really effective go-to-market plan. And you're going to be contributing at a very same level and collaborating with your PMM counterpart to create that go-to-market plan. Within our organization at Yahoo, we use something called a rapid framework, which is pretty much like the DRI framework that JACKLYN's team uses at Instacart. So rapid framework essentially is where there are 5 pillars to it. So R stands for recommendations, A stands for agree, P is for perform, I is for input, and then D is for decide. So essentially, in our case, when we talk about recommendation, so product manager and product marketing manager will work together, create a go-to-market plan, and that's basically their recommendation of what our go-to-market plan should look like. Mm-hmm. We have a big list of stakeholders who need to be in agreement, right? From your senior leadership to all the different functions who are going to be impacted by the product that you're planning to deliver. Then you have a group of people who are actually going to be implementing different things in order to achieve that go-to-market plan. So these are the people who are basically performing the job. And then you need people who are going to give you input on whether this go-to-market plan makes sense or not. And then finally, we have decision maker. So when it comes to the go-to-market plan, it's usually the marketing counterpart who's always the decision maker. But this rapid framework essentially really helps bring both collaboration as well as clarity in terms of who owns what and who's driving what.
Yeah, I would say ours works actually a little bit differently. At Upstart, I think it starts a lot with marketing. So our VP of marketing and his team under him, they really set the direction. So when you guys say at Instacart and Yahoo, the product vision and strategy is set by product, I would say we actually lean more on marketing for that first step. So for example, we sell an underwriting technology, right? And we traditionally were going after regional banks. And this year we pivoted towards credit unions. So our senior vice president looked to the marketing team to say, can you pull up total addressable market? Can you preen the data on our sales performance in the past with credit unions? Can you look into their business model and the regulations and why that differs? And they kind of like hit off on all these things and came together with a business case of like, we think we should go after this market segment. And then from there, it was handed off to me to say, what are the product features that differ between banks and credit unions? And how do we build those out and prioritize them? And then as they ship, I'll go back to marketing and say, like, we'll loop you in again, like towards the closing end for how do we actually bring this to customers and prospects. So I kind of think of it as a relay race. Like marketing is in our world, like closer to the customer and the data and the market sizing activities. And then it gets past us and then back.
We've talked about how things are structured. We've talked about when it works well. Do we have some examples of when it hasn't worked well? And, and then what did you do to fix that? Or what were the core problems there?
Well, one thing that I can actually give you an example of recent thing. My marketing counterpart and we've been working together for a long time. And that essentially has resulted in a very strong partnership, which essentially means to an extent, we do not have to define who owns what. We just worked together well as a well-oiled machine. We've gotten so used to working that way that when we had a new marketing counterpart join, in some ways we kind of assume that they will just fit into that equation easily. Yeah. So the learning curve there was that sometimes when a new person is brought on board, although you want to be collaborative, you want to make sure that you basically have all the things clearly laid out for them. You also want to work without an assumption there that they understand the things that you understand already.
Yeah.
It was an amazing learning curve where we really figured out, and it really had an impact on the way we aligned on product requirements on the go-to-market plan. Mm-hmm. So it has a cascading effect. It's not just how you work together, but then it has an impact on the deliverables. That has an impact on your timeline. So these small nuances have so much of a cascading impact that it's important to be very cognizant of how you define the structures, how you lay out the information, and then how you create an environment where if a new person or any new entity joins, it's easier for them to come on board.
I can share an example of a failure from my own career. So I was in a unique position where I was the product marketer for a mobile app at MasterCard when I used to work there. And I was in the marketing role for a number of years and eventually switched to being a PM, and I was assigned to that same mobile app.
Oh.
And when I became the product manager for that app, oh my God, I went back and like, as I understood the technology, I realized just like the vast chasm of understanding where when I was in the marketing team working on that app, I had never seen the APIs. I didn't know like what made the real-time data transfers work, and that completely changes the value prop and what kind of customer segments you can go after. So, you know, some technology details are like the platform and like maybe don't need to be surfaced, but I could see then that when I was in marketing, I probably understood like 10% or less of how the product functions. And it led to, like, I look back at the content I made about the product and it was just so watered down. It would be like easy to integrate, where I could have said, you know, like it's an API with 3 endpoints and we offer like the professional services package to go with it for the integration. Like you could just see how diluted the messaging got. Yeah. Because there was no understanding of the technology behind it. So I think at Upstart now, we're very fortunate that our marketing team like almost exclusively comes from a fintech and a lending background. So they understand like that's Upstart's business. They get it intuitively and they kind of understand the value prop and the technology. But if that's not the case, I think I would say it's incumbent on the PM to kind of like bring marketing to the fold, do that training, make sure they understand not just like the high level, but 2 or 3 or 4 layers deeper and like what makes the product work, what its limitations are, and getting a little deeper into the technology side.
It seems like a full discussion of those things to understand, you know, which of those are really super compelling and where you need to go deep and where maybe not so deep, right? Mm-hmm. Depending on the market, the competition, the situation, et cetera. JACKLYN, did you want to add something here?
Sure, yeah. It's an interesting example, KAITY, of, you know, when marketing maybe didn't always understand as much of the technical capabilities. My example, what I was thinking about when you're speaking is more when I, as the PM, haven't done a good enough job of like fully appreciating, understanding the way users would react to my product changes. So the context is that at Instacart, one thing we like to do is bundle features into a meaty launch such that the sum is greater than the parts. Mm-hmm. So we will come up with a group of features and have an overarching theme, a value prop that we try to really reinforce. So for this particular launch, we had 4 different features about pay and earnings that would really help shoppers, with the banner, the overall message being, we're going to give you more ingredients to earn on your own terms. So we had this package, we were almost ready to go, and we realized that one of the features was going to be delayed due to a dependency. And so we couldn't announce it as, okay, you'll get this now. We included it in the announcement, but said this part is coming soon. So you'll have 3 of these feature changes today, and this other one is coming soon. It wasn't the main focus, so we thought that would be fine. But what turned out to be the case is that this one feature was really coveted and desired by shoppers. Oh. It was the ability to basically cash out a bit faster than with the way they can cash out today. And it was really important. That was a material change for shoppers. Yeah. So the coming soon language
did
not work. It started, first day you see on social media, where is this? This is so exciting. When's this coming? A week later, where is this? This is so exciting. We thought we'd have this. And then, by the end of that second week, the tone really shifted to, Instacart lied. They promised this thing. We could see clearly that this delay had actually just eroded trust.
Yeah.
Because soon felt very vague.
Yeah.
So the main learning there was, be specific and really think about your timing on launches. Try to make sure you have very little daylight between when you announce and when someone's actually going to experience the product.
Right.
And really kick the tires on your messaging. Because I think if we had had more people look at that email, we would have caught that and realized that this is something that was important enough to shoppers that they wanted a specific time when they were going to get it. So that was a learning for both me and my counterpart on product marketing when we were shipping that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we basically accelerated, put our foot on the gas, and got it out the door as soon as possible.
I think those examples are really great because, they show a range of things. They show, when you should go deeper on the technology and the product, right? When the communication is lacking on that side, or on the other side where not really clear communication about how critical something was going to be to the end users and how important, and then also just building those bonds, right? Because it's those bonds ultimately, I think that trust and that collaboration that helps make sure that you're exchanging that information. But I suspect that there's also another piece to it, which is to some extent curiosity about what's going on the other side of the fence, right? Asking your counterpart questions, whether your counterpart is the PM or the product marketing person, and just, I guess, having that curiosity about what it is that they do, what it is that they know, what it is that's going on in their space, and their respect for their expertise on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, talk a little bit more, I think, about, those connections, right? Like, how do you guys build those connections? NIDHI, you talked a little bit about a changing situation where somebody new came in, but, and KAITY, you talked about switching, right? So, maybe KAITY, talk a little bit about more about when you moved from one side to the other, like, how did you then build those bonds back to the product marketing people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that the reason I got moved over to a product manager role goes back to the thing you're saying about curiosity and asking questions. At the time, marketing and product were like just operating in their own silos very disparately. And I was the product marketer that was always asking questions and wanting to get involved. I thought I understood the product like maybe 50%. It turned out to be less. But I think because I was more engaged, someone on the product team ended up pulling me over to an open role. In terms of how I've approached it since then, one thing I was sharing with you guys earlier is like never treat your product marketing partner like an ad agency or like they're just there to write down the text that's in your head. Because that's something when I was in marketing, I just hated. Like when a PM came to me and said, here, I thought about all the strategy. I know my customer. This is what I think the 4 bullet points should be, but make it pretty or make it sound nicer. That's the worst. So my mantra is like always to try to bring product in early and often, marketing in early and often and engage them throughout the whole product life cycle so that when you get to the launch phase, they're already embedded.
Yeah.
Just to build on that, I think we'll all agree, start early, engage early. And concretely, one thing we like to do that I think is actually borrowed from Amazon is early in the process, we do a PR FAQ where you write your mock press release and the FAQs for a product you're working on, internal FAQs as well as external FAQs. Like, how does this work? What are the functionalities?
Right.
So we actually go through that exercise with our product marketing counterpart where we haven't even started building yet. We don't even have mocks, but we're talking about like, what would this look like? How would we even position this to our end user?
Right.
help me write this peer FAQ, like, mock it up with me, squint at it. Does this hold water?
Yeah.
So that they can really gauge whether what we're building is going to make sense to our end users as well.
Got it.
So that's like a really concrete artifact that we found pretty useful in the product space.
NIDHI?
I was just saying, like, we use something very similar. We actually write one-pagers. So we basically partner with our marketing counterparts, engineering counterparts. And this is basically that high-level vision. What's the North Star vision? And you essentially backtrace from that. So it speaks extensively about, on an existing product, if it's a new feature, what will be the impact of this new feature? If it's an entirely new product, how it works with the existing product. Is there any cannibalization? What's the overlap? It addresses all those open questions. And then essentially, from a business perspective, what would be the impact on the business? At this point, there is no discussion about how we are going to solve this problem, but what's the problem and why should we be solving them? Where do we have our niche in the market? What is the differentiator for us? And then some high-level research on product positioning. So again, not fully flushed out, but in general, like, there's this particular area in the market where we can make a difference, or this product can solve a problem more effectively. So those one-pagers generally help a lot. They are generally one-pagers. We try to stick to at max one page, but it forces you to really think and summarize the problem statement and focus just on the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I say that all the time, like, write it down. You'll find all the problems, or at least the obvious ones, really quickly, right? I don't know about you guys. I get things in my head and then it seems like it makes sense. And then I write it down and I think, oh, no, that's not gonna work, like that.
And really, like, starting with the end in mind, writing it down in a way of where you want to end up, helps you kind of stay focused along the way.
I thought we could maybe turn our attention to, what are things, very specific things that you guys recommend? I mean, we just talked about, using documents to create that vision, but what are other things that you think are critical to keeping the team on track and in sync? So
I think there's 3 things that I always try to do for a go-to-market to keep everyone on track and aligned. So the first is to have a really robust go-to-market strategy or artifact, a document, deck, kind of your go-to-market source of truth. And that includes your timeline, positioning statements, experiment, ship criteria, like everything any stakeholder would need to know to answer a question of how we're going to market. And I think that's especially important in a remote world where you have these pretty thorny, complicated launches and a lot of different people. You need to make sure everyone's marching in the same direction at the same time and operating under the same set of assumptions. And so just having that core doc, I have found really, really valuable in the remote world.
Yeah.
The second thing I always really like to do is an exercise called a pre-mortem. So I started the panel by mentioning the high stakes and scrutiny on our work. And a pre-mortem exercise is especially targeted at these riskier product launches. The idea is, instead of doing a post-mortem after the product has launched and you're looking back and saying what worked well, what didn't, you actually up front and write down every single thing that could go wrong and assign a risk score and then talk about mitigations. And it's actually a very cathartic exercise because you have all these fears and worries and you just dump them all on a page, but then have a plan for addressing every single one. And so when something does go wrong, you can say, we thought about this, we assumed this risk, we realized it would happen, or, oh, actually, here's our mitigant, we're ready. We have
we can spring into action.
Exactly. So that's the second thing
that's the anti-anxiety medication right there that you got.
Exactly. And then the third thing that is critical is, I think, making sure you have actual end users reading all of your materials that you're going to put out into the world. And I'd say, 9 out of the 10 mistakes I've made in my go-to-markets and my, messaging could have been avoided had I done a better job of that, had I had more eyeballs on the actual materials.
Yeah.
Like the example I talked about earlier with the coming soon language, definitely could have caught that. And so getting real people to read and scrutinize what you're going to message is the third thing I think you have to do for a successful go-to-market.
Those are really good ones.
They are.
Something Upstart, because we're a lending company and it's like very regulated. Our compliance team does the same thing. At the beginning of every year, they have a spreadsheet that they say is hundreds of items long. It's like we're not privy to all of it, and they assign one person or people to like review every single line item. I don't know if I have anything super creative like that. In terms of how we collaborate with marketing, we just make sure that there is a representative for marketing at every weekly metric review, product design reviews with our UX team, or roadmap reviews, all of those pieces to make sure that we're in sync.
The only one thing that we do slightly differently at Yahoo, and that's essentially after shifting to the work from home model, we have these ideation workshops with our marketing counterparts. One of the biggest issues that we've seen is because in the past we've worked in that agency model where both product marketing, product, and other teams kind of work in their silos. This is where everyone comes together and ideate on that first draft of go-to-market. And this is to ensure that everybody understands what it takes to actually take a product to market. That kind of visibility with the rest of the team really helps us nail down on the go-to-market plan and get alignment better. And it just started as a very normal conversation where, yep, you can be a fly on the wall, but we realized that it's actually become a very good practice. And we've now started practicing it as an official thing, official process, essentially.
I like that you put that in here because, acknowledging the fact that, COVID and work from home has really changed a lot of the practices. And, it does have an impact on just daily running into people or building those personal relationships with people. And, how do you overcome those barriers in the work from home environment? I want to thank all of you. It's been great hearing from you. You had a lot of great things to say. For those people who are going to go to the breakouts, that's your chance to do Q&A. So you can ask questions, you can meet the speakers, you can join on screen. That's your opportunity to do that instead of me asking the questions. So thank you all so much. KAITY, JACKLYN, NIDHI, so great to talk to you today. And, thank you again from Upstart, Instacart, and Yahoo Finance. We really appreciate having you here, and everybody head off to the breakouts. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I learned a lot.
Likewise. I'm taking some best practices from both of you ladies.
Yeah, exactly.